What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. And happy Thanksgiving to those of you that celebrate. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'm not sure if this video is coming out Wednesday or Thursday, but regardless, if it's Turkey Day, have yourself a great day. Enjoy the friends, the family, and the good food. Let's continue with the rest of the regularly scheduled intro. My name is Eric. That's my co-host Will, and today we are going to be getting into the state of the tight end position in Dynasty, kind of how there's a youth movement going on. The influx of talent is coming in from the 2023 class and how that's going to affect rankings and strategy going forward. But before we get into that, Will, do you have anything to say to the people?
Absolutely. Speaking of Thanksgiving, we are extremely thankful for each and every one of you guys who hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for joining the community. We've been building up a lot as of late, and things have been great. The Discord is getting built up as well, too, so make sure you guys are hitting that Discord link in the description below, as well as that subscribe button. And hit up the comments. This is going to be an interesting conversation right here with the state of the tight end position, because things have definitely changed a lot, and you got to know how to navigate this. So we can go ahead and get into this one. You ready for this one, Eric?
Absolutely. It's definitely going to be an interesting and maybe difficult discussion. There's a lot of hard decisions to be made and nitpicking to be done at the tight end position. But I think, like we mentioned at the top, the influx of talent at the position is very welcome. We've had, Travis Kelce and basically nobody else for many, many years at this point. So it's nice to have some new, fresh faces producing in the Dynasty landscape. But we're here on Tier Maker, and we are going to start our list out in the S tier. Who would you like to put up here first?
You already know who I'm going to put up here first. It's my boy that I've been ringing the bell for since before he got drafted. It's Mr. Sam LaPorta. It's crazy how fast life comes at you, but just in terms of value at the tight end position, obviously he's a rookie and he has come out the gate sprinting, to say the least, and I think he's here to stay for a long time with this Detroit team as well. I think he's just carved out a role, and he's great in Dynasty going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the situation is fantastic where he's already a focal point of the offense and really has been since day one. It's him, Amon-Ra, Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's really where all the volume is going at this point in the passing game. And with such a highly productive and explosive offense, I don't see that changing for years to come. So he's absolutely established himself probably at the top end of this S tier. I would like to throw TJ Hockenson into the mix. I think he belongs as well, producing at an incredibly high level, really kind of regardless of quarterback so far this season. He's done it with Kirk. He's done it with Josh Dobbs. And so that's been great to see. Obviously, we want to see him stay healthy. He's been battling injuries for really the better part of the past 2 years. But yeah, the production is through the roof. And so I think he's easily established himself in this category as well.
Absolutely agree. Along with the extension that they gave him, I think the team has bought in on him as well. So I love Hawk going forward as well. And the next person I want to throw up in this tier, he's a little bit shakier, but there is a case to be made for him, and I definitely believe in him as a talent himself, is Mr. Dalton Kincaid. I believe in him up in this spot because for the last, I believe, 5 weeks, he's actually been outpacing Stephon Diggs in terms of production on the team. I think he's got about 5 more catches, about 50 more yards. Now, there's questions as to whether he's going to get the same volume if Dawson Knox isn't hurt. But I believe that even if he doesn't get this exact same volume, he's still carved out a role in this offense. He's still built up that trust in the offense, and he's proven that he can handle the workload going forward. So I got pretty much all reason to believe in Dalton Kincaid, at least going forward, because Dawson Knox, one, he won't be with this team forever. And two, him coming back with this team, we still saw games with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox where they were both pretty productive as well. So it's not to say Dalton Kincaid would be a zero if Dawson Knox came back too.
Yeah, you make a good point that he's probably the shakiest of the S tier group. But I think he definitely deserves to continue with the role and with the usage that he's had since Knox has gone down. And I think that the team has benefited from it as well. So I hope that they also have that same sentiment. Is that going to round out the S tier for us, you think?
That is for me. Just in terms of value itself and in terms of dynasty value, I think that is going to round out the S tier.
Yeah, I think I would agree. There's definitely some names that you can put in the conversation, and we'll have the conversation heading into the A tier. We do have Brock Bowers included in this list because, this is going to be the state of the tight end position going forward, and he's the top prospect in the 2024 class. He would probably lead off the A tier for me. Um, he's a generational tight end prospect. He's probably one of the top 4 tight end prospects just in terms of college production, athleticism. In the same conversation as guys like Kyle Pitts, Rob Gronkowski, Vernon Davis in terms of like historical college prospects. The only reason that I don't have him in S tier is because we've yet to see his landing spot. We don't know the situation that he's going to be dropped into, and we've seen with these high end prospects what can happen if they go to the wrong situation. Hint, hint, Kyle Pitts. Hopefully, we don't have the same situation come to fruition here, but I'm going to be a little bit more conservative and put him at the beginning of the A tier.
Yeah, I think, honestly, us having Brock Bowers in this A tier right here, it really is us just learning that lesson from Kyle Pitts. That landing spot really can be everything. Coaching situation can be everything because it can take a generational prospect and turn him into a blocker. So it's going to depend on where he lands at. And Brock Bowers, I believe in him as a talent. I do, and we very much believe he could work his way into the S tier very easily depending on landing spot. Yeah. But until we see that, we're taking the safe route for now. But there's a lot of ceiling left. And then looking at the A tier for the next person I think we had up here, we're looking at Travis Kelce, which I feel like is going to be a little bit contentious amongst the community, possibly. Just given the fact he does produce as much as he is. End of the day, he is 34 years old. At some point, this is going to stop, even if that is just as much as him just saying, I don't want to play football anymore. You know what I mean? He could retire at the top of his game. So to say like he has to fall off a cliff before he's gone, not necessarily something that's going to happen. But he is getting up there in age, which is concerning. Like something that we had said about him prior is that he is like an S tier level player when it comes to production, but he's like an A tier level player when it comes to value, just because of how old he is. There's a lot of contending teams who are going to try to trade for him. I feel like in every Dynasty league, you see at least one Travis Kelce trade every year, like with him going somewhere. So I think this is a fair spot to put him. We're not saying, Travis Kelce as a talent is not up in the S tier because he is. It's just, it'd be naive to say he's not. But the value is declining.
Yeah, absolutely. At 34 years old, and we're starting to hear those rumblings of potential, retirement talks. I don't want to get carried away. It's all speculation at this point. We have no idea what's going to happen. And I think based on what you said, like the production is still there. He's still at the top of his game. I think he could continue for a couple more years, which is why we wouldn't have him any lower than this. But yeah, at 34, it's tough to have him in the same conversation as the young guys that are producing at a fairly similar level right now.
Agreed.
And then immediately after Travis Kelce, the guy who's probably been right behind him in the Dynasty tight end rankings for a few years, it's going to be Mark Andrews. Obviously, he's coming off of the, ankle injury? Ankle injury, right?
Mm-hmm.
Believe so. Which I think we just got news yesterday that it's not quite as serious as it was initially believed to be, and there's a glimmer of hope that he might be able to return for a late playoff push. I'm not counting on that. I don't believe in that necessarily, but it is a positive sign for his health going forward that it's not going to be a lingering issue or something that's going to continue to hurt him down the line. Mm-hmm. He's been incredibly productive so far throughout his career, the focal point of the Ravens offense, and was even this year with the new OC, Todd Monken. And so I expect that to continue going forward. He's 28 years old, but, as we just talked about with Travis Kelce being 34 and still at the top of his game, I'm not really worried about longevity or age yet with Mark Andrews.
No, I completely agree. I think he's performing at a high level just when he's not on my fantasy teams. So I think he's a great value in Dynasty. He's not that old yet either. I believe he's, 28, 29?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
28.
Yeah, so he's not that old either. And health isn't really a concern, but I feel like it is kind of an issue for him. In terms of him being injury prone, I don't think he's injury prone, but I do feel like he does spend a lot of time off the field as well. But that's just me and my personal biases there kind of shining through. But I love Mark Andrews as a player. I love him as a value. And like you said, he's always up there in the mix in terms of points per game tight ends and guys who are going to do serious numbers every year. So I do love Mark Andrews as long as he's on this Baltimore Ravens team with Lamar Jackson. So, yeah, and that seems to be a foreseeable future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for the A tier, we're going to talk about this one right here. because this is someone that you put in the A tier, someone that I'm willing to put here as well, but I do feel like it does warrant a conversation. It's Trey McBride when it comes to him and his rankings, because I feel like compared to everybody else in the A tier, besides Brock Bowers, who hasn't played an NFL snap yet, he's probably the shakiest out of all of them, but at the same time, the ceiling is there and potential is there. But how do you feel about Trey McBride right here? Just because he has the smallest sample size out of everyone, besides Brock Bowers.
The sample size for sure. 100% agree with that. In terms of history of production, he's going to be the shakiest. But I'm actually, I'm not ready to make the argument, but I think that there's a decent argument to be made that he could belong in the conversation for S tier even. The level of production in the small sample size that we've seen, and especially the usage that we've seen the past few weeks, has been fantastic. This last week, especially even in what was, not a crazy blow-up game, I think he got 7 targets, 5 receptions, 43 yards against Houston. But he was on the field for every single offensive snap and ran a route on every single Kyler dropback. Like, the usage is absolutely there. He was the highest targeted player on the team. It seems like he's becoming the Mark Andrews of the Arizona offense, where he is the focal point. He's the number 1 receiving option on the team. And, if you go back to his college days, he was incredibly productive at Colorado State, I believe. I think he led the nation at the tight end position in terms of receiving yards and stuff like that. So yeah, I think he's got the pedigree as a talent, and I think he's also getting the usage to warrant being in this group, even though the sample size is fairly small.
No, and I absolutely agree. I think that when he has been out there on the field and they've been using him, I think he has been, like you said, a focal point of this offense. And it's just a matter of, Kyler's back now, and, things should get better for this offense as well, and things should get better for Trey McBride too. So definitely the ceiling's the sky for him right now. And is that going to round out this tier as well for you?
I think it does. Again, similar to what we talked about at the end of the S tier, I think there's an argument to be made for maybe one more guy in here, and we can talk about it. For me, that's George Kittle, just based on what we've seen from him this season. We constantly talk about him as this boom-bust tight end that's not consistent. The thing is, once you get outside of the top tier of tight ends, nobody's consistent. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost a moot point. And when he's putting up, week-winning weeks at the rate that he is, excuse me, I'm also looking him up right now, so I can show you his weekly production. But when he's putting up, 20-point games on a not that irregular basis, I think there's a case to be made for him to be A tier. But I do wonder what the situation is going to look like going forward in San Francisco. And he's also starting to age, and he's been closer to that injury-prone label than maybe some of the guys ahead of him. So he's not always out there on the field. But I'm interested in your take. How do you feel about George Kittle right now?
I think it's like you said, he's highly productive on the weeks that he is productive on. It's a lot of mouths to feed over there, I feel like, in San Francisco, so it's tough to really depend on him on a week-to-week, and that's probably why, especially with Brandon Ayuk being the super receiver he is over there now, that it's tough to really spread the ball out when you got him and Christian McCaffrey taking a lot of targets. But I like George Kittle a lot, and like you said, when it comes to the whole he's boom or bust, everybody that's down here at the bottom of this tier list at this point is. So it's tough to really say that any of them are going to be, super consistent. In terms of tiers, I just don't know if those booms are enough to put him in that A tier with the rest of these guys, just because they don't come as often as they do. But what have you seen when you look them up for this year?
So again, this is small sample size. We have a career's worth of production where it's been inconsistent and up and down. He started the season not that great, with 3 of his first 4 games being below 5 fantasy points in half PPR scoring. Those are week-killing weeks. He also had one in week 6 with less than 1 point. But outside of that, week 3, 12.5, week 5, 26.2, and then the last 4 weeks, 10.5, 19.4, 19.1, and 18.9. He's been balling. Okay. And he's been much more involved as of late. Again, I don't know how much we want to weigh that versus years and years of production and the stats that we've seen. But, he's 30 years old, so he's around, he's 2 years older than Mark Andrews, 4 years younger than Travis Kelce, and currently, let me go back to the overall standings here. He's the tight end 3 in points per game, just above Mark Andrews, and 2 points behind Travis Kelce. So
I'm pretty sure.
Context, I don't know if it changes much.
I'm pretty sure too. I think last year when they had the whole quarterback carousel of everybody going around, I think when it all came down to it, Brock Purdy was the one who threw the ball to George Kittle the most out of everyone too, I believe.
Yeah.
So like going forward, he might be more of a focal point of the offense, especially if Debo's not there going forward. Or now Brandon Ayuk is also coming up on his contract, but hopefully they're going to probably re-sign him.
Yeah. It's one of those two. I don't imagine that Ayuk and Debo are going to both be in the plans for them. Or I don't think they're going to be able to, keep them both signed to the team with how big their contracts are going to have to be. So did we just convince ourselves to put him at the back end of A tier?
I think so. I think we did. Yeah, I like that. I like George Kittle at the back of A tier.
Yeah. I dig it. All right. I think that's probably well deserved. But that, I think, will round out the A tier. Which means that there might be a solo sitting in the B tier unless we convince ourselves otherwise again. And that's probably going to be Kyle Pitts. Man, it's tough to continue to believe. Obviously, it's not a lack of talent. I don't think he's diminished as a player. I still don't think he's 100% healthy off of that knee injury that he was dealing with this offseason and at the end of last season. Just looking at the tape, his gait is weird. Like it looks like he's kind of running almost with a limp. He's clearly not as fast as we had seen him earlier in his career and in college. He's not separating at the same level. And I do wonder, part of that is probably injury. I don't want to throw him under the bus, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but I do wonder if any of it is just like the situation that he's in and has been for years, where he knows he's supremely talented, but just isn't being utilized the way that he should be. Like if the effort isn't quite there all the time. Again, I'm not saying that that's the case, just a potential explanation, but clearly hasn't reached the level of production that the talent warranted and that we thought he was going to have. What's your take here? And future-wise, what do you project?
So he's got to be right here in B tier just because, like you said, the potential is there. It's still, at the end of the day, he's still one of the best prospects we've ever seen at the tight end position. We've seen him perform his rookie year, at a pretty high level. We haven't seen that since.
Very high level.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that's, like you said, because of his knee, because he hasn't looked as explosive as he has in prior years. There's been a lot of plays he's gotten bullied and pushed down as well by people on defense. So he hasn't looked as strong as he has in past years. It's just, and the worst part of it all is that I feel like a lot of this is due to the coaching situation, right? With Arthur Smith and, the way that he values and uses the players that he has on his team. But Arthur Smith is doing well as a coach. And, no owner is going to fire a head coach just because you're not using Kyle Pitts enough. You know what I mean? At least as far as I can see.
Do you think that that's still the case? Like, I think that argument, where are they at right now? What's the Falcons' record?
I think they're still competitive in their division, and that's the problem.
I mean, they're in the worst division in football. They are 4-6 and tied for second place in their division. I don't know. I think they're easily the most talented roster of their division. Like, I don't know. I'm considering whether or not I would say that Arthur Smith is doing a good job as a coach.
All I'm saying is they make it to the playoffs. There's no reason to fire him. They're competitive in their division. There's no reason to fire him. So it's just, and as long as he's here, Kyle Pitts is not going to do well. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Because it's just, they don't have to blow the doors off of it because they are in the worst division in football, unless they just get tired of him. But I'm saying Kyle Pitts not producing for fantasy is not a reason why they're going to get rid of Arthur Smith. Things would have to go pretty wrong. Yeah. So until I see that happen, it's tough to really be optimistic in Kyle Pitts because we've already seen what they're going to do with him, and it's what they've been doing. Now, maybe there's a glimmer of hope that maybe he's been ramped down as much as he has this year because he's not 100%, because the team knows that, and they're like, all right, we're not going to force it to him then. We'll let him ramp his way up. Whenever he's ready. And maybe that's the case. But I'm not optimistic. I'm not super hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree for the most part. You know what's crazy?
Hmm?
He's still 23 years old.
Yeah.
Like he's still younger than Dalton Kincaid. It's wild.
It's nuts.
So there's so many years still left to be had of great production if he can get healthy and be in the right situation, but that's a fairly big if considering what we've seen so far the past few years. I still believe that it's gonna happen, that the stars are gonna align for him at some point. But it's risky in terms of like acquiring him in Dynasty. You know, I'm not. If you can buy low on him, I would probably still be willing to do that. Not on a contender because you know you need the tight end to produce, but on a rebuilder, I think if you can get him for cheap, it's worth it. Because I think that you know things will trend in the right direction eventually. It's just when's that gonna happen?
Yeah, it'll take some time.
But yeah. So I think currently he's probably alone in the B tier for me. Would you agree?
Yeah, as I'm looking at the guys below, and none of them are really making huge, strong cases for being in that same tier with Kyle Pitts. None of them I'm really as hopeful about as I am about Kyle Pitts, at least. So I think it's fair to keep him right there.
Yeah. All right, so let's run through these last 5 guys here a little bit quicker, just because one, they're lower on the totem pole, and two, it's probably harder to differentiate between them. But the next guy in the C tier, who's that going to be for you?
It's going to be Mr. Mayer, I believe. Michael Mayer. I think things are turning around for him pretty soon. You know, I think he's going to have some good games down the stretch. Obviously, you know, the situation was what it was in Las Vegas, but now, you know, Josh McDaniels is out of there. The witch is dead. So hopefully things can get better for this offense and things will propel. Obviously, we've seen him actually perform a little bit better now that he is gone. So I'm hopeful that he's going to be doing better going forward. And we've seen him perform at a very high level in college, one of the most productive tight ends in college football history. So I'm hopeful for Michael Mayer going forward. But like I said, I feel like he's got a ceiling that's capped compared to some of these guys just off of, I guess, his own tool set, I feel like. But I do feel like he still could produce at a very high level in the NFL. So he does have some room to go up this tier list as well.
He's definitely. We haven't seen it enough to put him up there, but I think he could find himself in a similar area to Trey McBride, or even potentially all the way up in the LaPorta range. We've just yet to really see that come to fruition yet. So hopefully he has a little bit of a late season breakout. He's the last one that I'm like, that I have that level of optimism for, where he could vault himself all the way up into the A or maybe even S tier. The rest of these guys, I think we can kind of talk about as a group. I think Jake Ferguson is making a good case for himself. It's heavily reliant on touchdowns, but he's been looked at by Dak. And, you know, prior to Brandon Cooks really last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, he had been the number 2 in that offense.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because when people are saying like someone's touchdown reliant, you know, sure. But when they're throwing the ball to him all the time in the red zone and the end zone, it's like, yeah, okay, so that's just their role in the offense. Yeah,
and then what do you think here? Like, we have Kmet, we have Schultz, we have Goedert left.
Cole has been on a tear.
Do they all belong in C?
Cole's been on a tear this year.
Yeah.
I feel like out of everybody, although I'm not as optimistic about him as I am with like Michael Mayer, I feel like he does, at least how he's performing as of late, he has shown that he does have a pretty high ceiling from week to week, and he can perform because he's been hooping this year.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think a similar thing can be said for Dalton Schultz and the connection that he started to develop with CJ Stroud. Even with, like we saw last week, even with Tank Dell and Nico Collins healthy, he was still able to produce. He found the end zone. And we've seen that throughout the season as well. So even though he's a little bit older than the rest of this group, I think that his connection with CJ Stroud is probably enough to warrant him being here.
He's on a 1 year right now, isn't he? They got to bring him back after this year.
They do, yeah. I guess that is a little bit of a question mark, but I would imagine
they should. That's just something I literally just remembered. Yeah, I'd imagine they bring him back.
That's definitely, yeah. No, it's absolutely worth bringing up. That's a good point. And then Dallas Goedert, the last guy that we have here on the list. Do you think he belongs in the same tier? Is he a tier below, just based on the team construction with the amount of mouths to feed that they have, the injuries that he's gone through? He has been productive, or at least he was last year. Not really so much this year. What are your thoughts with him?
I think that when we're taking a look at the C tier, we're looking at a bunch of guys who don't have a lot of target competition. We're looking at Michael Mayer, whose biggest competition right now is Devontae Adams. Who knows if he'll even be there next year because the Jets are pursuing him in a trade.
Yeah.
Jake Ferguson, his only competition, CeeDee Lamb, who's been putting up video game numbers, but Jake Ferguson's probably like the number 2 in that offense right now. I feel like Cole Kmet, similar spot. He's got DJ Moore. No one else really competing for targets. Dalton Schultz. Tank Dell and Nico Collins, I'd say, but still no real amazing target competition there. But Dallas Goedert has A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and that makes things very difficult. With also a sprinkle of Jalen Hurts, who's also going to run the ball too. So it's tough to have him in that same tier with those guys, if you look at it like that.
No, I like that, and I think I would agree with you there. So that will round out the tier list and the rankings list and kind of the breakdown of the actual player evals that we have currently in the tight end landscape. But now we can kind of close out with a little bit of a strategy discussion in terms of how things have changed from previous years, how you should go about drafting in a startup, and just the value of the tight end position in general. This 2023 class really reinvigorated the position and shook things up. What are your thoughts, just general strategy, and how things are changing?
No, I agree. I think this 2023 class brought some parity to the position. I believe it's not as top heavy as it used to be. It used to just be you need to have Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, or George Kittle on your team, or you're just going to have a positional advantage. Where now it's like you got guys like Sam LaPorta, Dalton Kincaid, obviously TJ Hockenson too. He's an older guy that's been emerging as well. But it's definitely brought a little bit of level out to the field itself. So in terms of value at the tight end position, it's in a way driven the value down of the tight end position in the way that it's spread out things as much. So yeah, there's definitely some things to be talked about in that, with that being said.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to get into. I think that's a really good point. I don't want to get too carried away and get like too far ahead of ourselves with this because, we haven't even seen a full year of production from these guys that we're talking about potentially surmounting or at least reaching the same level as we've seen the Kelces do and stuff like that. But, if they continue on their current trajectory, then the tight end position is definitely going to be younger, deeper, and more productive than it has been for the past half decade, really. For the past 5 years, the position has been completely owned by Travis Kelce. And so, like you alluded to, that meant a massive positional advantage for anybody that had him, and especially in tight end premium leagues. It was a cheat code. Like anybody else that didn't have that was trying to play catch up to you. And so because of that, Kelce had been taken in the second or third round of Superflex startups dating back to 2016. And, it's an issue of supply and demand where the supply of tight ends was really low. And so the demand was incredibly high. And that meant, Kelce gets drafted high. But then also it led Dynasty players to overdraft rookie tight ends with promise. Guys like Kyle Pitts, Pat Freiermuth, Noah Fant, O.J. Howard, Evan Ingram. Anybody in that kind of category got pushed way too far up draft boards only to disappoint and not really provide the same difference-making value that they were looking for. And so not only was the Kelce owner benefiting from that increased production, but also from like the desperation of their league mates, leading them to squander those high-value draft picks, giving them even more of an advantage, which is crazy to think about. But so all of that to say that the landscape might be changing. Kelce is aging out. These young guys are pushing themselves up the board. And again, supply and demand, but in the opposite direction. Higher supply, less demand. To get into the point that you made is probably going to drive the price of all tight ends down. Like if you're sitting there in a startup with LaPorta, Kincaid, Hockenson, Bowers, Kelce, all these guys on the board, you're going to be more inclined to wait. And so I think we need to rethink the strategy going forward as long as the trajectory of these young guys continues.
No, I absolutely agree. I think it's one of those, it's just like we kind of talked about a little bit before the video. It's like stocks. You want to buy in kind of early, you know what I'm saying? You want to buy in when they're young. But in the way, like, these tight ends that have come out this year, people who use those higher draft picks on them, they're benefiting from that because they're performing at a high level. And like you said, those guys with the good tight ends aren't getting that same advantage in terms of drafts and people who are, left behind that are getting left behind for a middling tight end pick. So I think that right now with these guys being out here the way that they are, like a Sam LaPorta, Dalton Kincaid, they're going to be expensive to try to get off of a team. Like, to try to get from someone else at this point, you're going to have to pay a king's ransom. So that's what I mean, like, when I say they're like stocks. It's a little bit too late to get in on guys like that. You may still be able to get on the Brock Bowers conversation while that's still going on, but who knows how he's really going to perform at the next level, as we talked about earlier. So in terms of value for these players, I think that what teams need to do is focus more so on the value that can be found outside of the tight end position, now that the tight end position can be valued the way that it is, if that makes sense.
It does. I think this kind of lends itself. Again, I want to make sure that we emphasize we're not trying to get too far ahead of ourselves. This is more projection than anything. It's still very possible that Kelce retires soon, and only a few of these guys that we're talking about pan out to that level, and we're left in a similar position that we have been the past, half decade. Mm-hmm. But again, if trajectory continues, I think that you're absolutely right that a more balanced approach to team building is going to win out. Where you don't need to reach early for those tight ends, and I think that you're just going to look to other positions, and there's going to be probably an increase in the amount of ways that you can go about building a team and still be successful and still win championships. You don't need to have necessarily the top tight end like a Kelce. But yeah, I think that probably rounds out the discussion, the strategy discussion, the overall tight end landscape discussion. I hope you guys gained something from that. Will, do you have anything to add before we kind of wrap up here?
Like to the tight end discussion itself? Be smart about it, guys. Like I said, it's like stocks. Buy in early. If you can't buy in early, look for value elsewhere. Don't try to get caught up on this tight end race, because right now it's about as good as it's ever been. So don't get too honed in on the tight end position anymore. That's something I got to kind of retrain myself to do. I'm sure Eric does as well, too. Look for value elsewhere. And other than that, that's really all I got for this one. So thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far into the video, make sure you do all that great YouTube stuff. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you know when we drop all of our latest videos. We should be doing one of these videos for, I believe, every position group. So be looking forward to that, because we will be going into a deep dive. If you guys have seen our other videos that we put out earlier this week, you'll have seen some of these tier lists. And as you can see, things can change. So we're going to be going through those and letting you guys know. And hit that like button. It's absolutely free. The best way to get our stuff out there into the YouTube algorithm. And hit us up in the comments below if you disagree or agree with any of our takes here. If you agree with this tier list, let us know down below. We know it's going to be a little contentious. Just be kind down in the comments to us and to each other. So with that being said, Eric, you got anything else for the people?
Yeah, real quickly, check out those links in the description below, especially our Discord. That's been popping. We've been really growing over there. Really appreciated all the people that have joined in and become part of the community. I do think with the amount of people that we have in there now, we're probably going to have a little Discord Dynasty League. At this point, I think we probably have over the amount of people that we need to have one league. We'll see if we do multiple, but we'll have a discussion about that. Either way, join the community. We talk in there every day about Dynasty strategy, trades, all that good stuff. So come hang out. And then also links to our sponsors, whether it be Dynasty Owner or Do Numbers if you're interested in some cool apparel, t-shirts, hoodies, hats. Will's wearing one right now. Go get yourself some sweet apparel at 15% off using our promo code in the description. But with that, again, we appreciate you guys very much, and if you stuck with us all the way till the end of the video, as always, we love you, and we will catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.